Soul Streaming Entry 26. Where's the proof? A living, breathing, audio, and written experience by Sim. I don't have a name for this season of my life yet, but I know I've arrived somewhere new. It feels like another level of integration, another level of embodiment, another level of manifestation. It doesn't feel like a destination as much as it feels like an identity. The strange thing about this arrival is that it didn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrived quietly, the same way so many meaningful shifts have been arriving lately. I found myself recognizing that I was finally living inside the feelings I had once only hoped were possible. Peace felt more familiar. If I had to describe it, I would say it feels like I've become the safest place I've ever lived. Trust came more naturally. My nervous system wasn't bracing for the next thing to go wrong. Somewhere along the way, I had become the very person I had spent years trying to grow into. When that realization washed over me, I placed my hand over my heart and asked every previous version of myself for forgiveness. Not because she had failed me, but because I had been so quick to judge her while she was carrying me toward the life I now get to experience. Every version of me was necessary. Every season had been building this one. Suddenly, I could feel it. Not because anything dramatic had changed outside of me, but because everything had changed inside of me. I realized I wasn't waiting for proof anymore. Somewhere along the way, my identity had become my proof system. I spend a lot of time in conversation with myself and with my spirit team. To someone else, it might look like I'm simply talking to myself. But those conversations have become one of the most intimate parts of my day. We don't only communicate through meditation or stillness, we communicate through life itself. Nature has become one of our favorite languages. One day it's a baby groundhog standing outside my window. Another day it's a species of bird I've never noticed before, suddenly appearing in my neighborhood to eat. Then there are the repeating numbers, the unexpected moments of silence, or the tiny interruptions that invite me to pay closer attention. I don't need those moments to mean something to anyone else. Within my own universe, they have become gentle reminders to slow down, listen, and participate in the conversation that is always unfolding around me. I've always trusted my feelings first, before my thoughts, before my intuition, before my physical eyes ever confirm what is happening around me. My heart has usually already begun whispering the truth. My feelings are my first set of eyes. My intuition is my second. My physical eyes simply catch up later. That's how I've learned to experience my own universe. The morning this realization came together, I actually woke up feeling a little grumpy. Instead of trying to force myself into a better mood, I simply said, okay. I decided to walk to the beauty supply store to pick up the next colors for my hair. I had charged my headphones the night before, but by the time I made it downstairs, I realized I had left them sitting on the charger. For a brief moment, I considered turning back, but something in me said, just keep walking. That forgotten pair of headphones became a gift. The silence created space for another conversation with my spirit team. And by the time I made it back home, everything I had been trying to understand suddenly began fitting together. It was as if another layer of coding had unlocked inside of me. I could suddenly see a pattern that had been there all along. I realized that I hadn't just changed the way I lived. I had slowly created an entirely new proof system. For most of my life, I inherited someone else's definition of proof. Proof looked like a paycheck, a degree, a promotion, a relationship, a title, a life that made sense to everyone looking from the outside. None of those things are wrong. They simply reflected the frequency I was living from at the time. When I was operating from survival, the proof I gathered reflected survival. I believed my security lived outside of me. So I constantly collected evidence that my worth depended on external achievements. Looking back, I don't judge that version of myself. She was simply creating proof that matched the consciousness she had access to then. Then another question found me. What if the proof I've been searching for hasn't only been outside of me? What if it's been quietly collecting all along? 25 soul streaming entries, now 26, countless journal pages, boundaries I never thought I had the strength to keep, versions of myself I never imagined becoming, the way I love myself now, the way I no longer abandon myself, the way I keep choosing truth, even when it would be easier to perform certainty. Maybe the proof isn't only found in what has materialized. Maybe the proof is the person I've become before everything else catches up. That realization became the doorway to an even bigger question, one that would completely reshape the way I define proof in the first place. Redefining proof. Leaving my previous life wasn't only about leaving corporate. Looking back, I realized I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was redesigning my relationship with proof. It was about leaving an entire system of measuring myself. Little by little, I stopped asking what should count as proof and started asking what kind of life do I actually want to experience. My answer was never fame, prestige, or constant achievement. I wanted peace more than performance, ease more than exhaustion, freedom more than security that came with self abandonment, a regulated nervous system more than a prestigious title, a life where I knew, not hoped, that everything would somehow work itself out. Those desires became the blueprint for an entirely different way of living, and eventually, an entirely different way of defining proof. Before my external world ever has a chance to catch up, my internal world has already become evidence that something real is taking place. Society often teaches us that proof is evidence. It's the thing you can hold, point to, or measure. the degree, the marriage, the promotion, the house, the money in the bank, the validation, the external result. We're taught that once we have those things, then we have proof that we made it, that we succeeded, or that life is finally working in our favor. But what if that's only one layer of proof? What if we've been taught to recognize proof only at the finish line while overlooking the thousands of moments that quietly created the finish line in the first place? My definition of proof has expanded far beyond external evidence. Proof isn't only what eventually manifests, proof is also the path that creates it. It's every decision that gently redirects my life, every feeling I allow myself to fully experience instead of suppressing it, every moment I choose to meet myself differently than I did yesterday. It's the lens I choose to look through, the frequency I choose to embody, the conversations I have with myself and my spirit team, the ways nature reflects those conversations back to me, and the courage to keep taking the next honest step even when I can't see the outcome just yet. The external world eventually reflects those choices, but the proof was already unfolding long before the evidence appeared. Looking back, I can see that I wasn't simply waiting for my life to change. I was changing, moment by moment, choice by choice, perspective by perspective. My inner world was quietly becoming the very foundation my outer world would eventually stand on. I can feel myself responding instead of reacting, observing instead of attaching, flowing where I once resisted. Those shifts may not be measurable to anyone else, but they're impossible for me to ignore. I no longer believe that proof is something I wait for. Shit, I believe proof is something I participate in creating. Every present moment gives me an opportunity to decide what kind of proof I'm building. If I choose fear, I'll eventually find evidence that supports fear. If I choose trust, openness, love, curiosity, forgiveness, and expansion, I begin creating a reality that naturally reflects those qualities back to me. The path itself becomes a confirmation that I'm already moving toward what I desire, even before I can physically hold it in my hands. Maybe that's why I've become less interested in asking, where's the proof, and far more interested in asking, what proof am I creating in this moment? That question changes everything. It returns my power back to me because it reminds me that my life is always being co created, one present moment at a time. I don't have to wait until I arrive somewhere to know I'm on the right path. Every choice, every perspective, every act of self trust is already becoming tomorrow's evidence. Every present moment is already offering me proof. Because I've come to believe that every external manifestation is first built by an internal frequency long before the evidence appears, something inside us has already begun to change. The question is whether I'm willing to recognize that I have been creating all along. That's why creating this proof from the inside matters so much. If I had needed the external world to convince me first, I might have abandoned myself the moment someone questioned my path. Instead, I choose to feel my way into a different reality before I could fully see it. That inner knowing became strong enough to support me while the rest of my life slowly caught up and still catches up, if you know what I mean. I think that's why solitude became so sacred to me. When you're reconstructing your belief system, every voice carries influence. I needed enough quiet to hear my own. I needed space to decide what counted as evidence inside my universe before allowing the world to offer its opinion. At first, solitude wasn't always peaceful. Sometimes it meant sitting with every fear, every old belief, every inherited expectation, and every voice that had ever told me who I was supposed to be. There were moments when it was difficult to tell the difference between my own truth and the echoes of everything I had absorbed along the way. But something beautiful happened the longer I stayed. Those voices slowly became quieter, not because I fought them, but because they no longer needed my attention. Another voice became easier to recognize, mine. Looking back, I don't think hearing my own voice was ever the hardest part. I think trusting it was, especially when what it was asking of me looked nothing like the life I had built before. Trusting my own voice meant disappointing old expectations. It meant walking away from proof systems that had once made me feel safe. It meant believing in a future I couldn't yet point to or explain. That kind of trust stretches you because there's rarely external confirmation in the beginning. Sometimes all you have is the quiet knowing inside your own heart. But I've learned that's enough because every time I chose to trust that quiet knowing, it became a little louder. Every time I honored it, I gathered another piece of evidence that my own soul could be trusted. Looking back now, I realized solitude didn't simply help me hear myself. It helped me build a relationship with the voice I would eventually trust to help guide my life. The proof in practice. One thing I have realized about myself is that I have always been incredibly resourceful. If resourcefulness had a middle name, it would probably be mine. Resourcefulness is one of the languages my faith speaks. I don't spend much time obsessing over what didn't work because my mind naturally starts looking for what comes next. As long as I can see the next step, I'm good. I don't need to see the entire staircase. I don't need every answer before I begin moving. Give me one honest step and I'll meet it with everything I got. I've learned to trust that the next one will reveal itself when it's time. Looking back, I realized this wasn't simply part of my personality. It was one of the ways my soul had always been teaching me to move through the world. I've also realized that flow is a frequency. It isn't that life suddenly becomes perfect. It's the willingness to move with what is being presented instead of arguing with it. I know in my heart and in my soul that I have arrived at another level of softness. I can feel it in the way I respond to life. I can feel it in the way I move through uncertainty. I can feel it in the way I no longer rush to force an outcome simply because I cannot yet see the finished picture. This softness isn't weakness. It isn't passivity. It's trust. It's the quiet confidence that life is revealing exactly what I need, one layer at a time, and that I don't have to wrestle every experience into becoming what I think it should be. I think that's why I've been talking so much about flow. Flow isn't the absence of challenges, it's the absence of resistance to what is already here. I simply say, okay, not because I'm giving up, but because I trust that this moment is complete until the next moment presents itself. Then I respond to that moment, and then the next. That's the frequency I've been living in lately. I've also realized that this is how I create proof. Society taught me to believe that proof lives at the end of the journey. Get the degree, get the relationship, get the money, get the external thing. Then you'll have proof. But I don't experience life that way anymore. Every layer of life reveals new information. And every time something new is revealed, I have another opportunity to decide what it means. That decision becomes the next piece of proof. I can look at what is unfolding through fear and create more evidence that life is working against me. Or I can look at the same unfolding through trust, curiosity, and openness and create evidence that life is guiding me somewhere I couldn't yet see. The experience itself doesn't create the proof. The meaning I choose to give the experience does. That meaning shapes the next decision I make. And those decisions eventually become the reality I'm living. Friendship has become another place where I can clearly see my proof system changing. There was a time when I believed being a good friend meant always showing up, always understanding, always giving people the benefit of the doubt. I wore loyalty like a badge of honor, even when loyalty came at the expense of myself. Somewhere along the way, I unconsciously gathered proof that love and friendship were measured by how much I was willing to sacrifice, how much I could carry, and how much I could overlook. I believed that if I kept showing up, eventually the relationship would reflect the same care back to me. During some of the darkest moments of my life, I realized that my proof system wasn't creating the kind of friendships my heart truly desired. It wasn't about blaming anyone else. It was about recognizing that I had been participating in a pattern that no longer reflected who I was becoming. If I wanted to experience friendships rooted in reciprocity, honesty, emotional safety, and mutual care, then I had to begin creating proof that honored those values instead. Interestingly enough, life gave me an opportunity to witness that shift during Mercury retrograde, when an old friendship resurfaced. I wasn't being asked whether I was willing to reconnect. I was being invited to notice whether I would return to the version of myself that had once accepted less than what I now know I deserve. The answer surprised me with how peaceful it felt. I realized I wasn't closing the door on a person as much as I was closing the door on an old way of showing up. If we were ever going to build something new, it would have to begin with two new people getting to know one another, not the two old versions trying to recreate a dynamic that no longer fit either of us. That realization made my decision feel less like rejection and more like alignment. Maybe that's another form of proof. Proof isn't always receiving what you've been asking for. Sometimes proof is quietly realizing you've become someone who can no longer settle for what you've already outgrown. That's the proof I'm creating now. Not friendships built on obligation, history, or overgiving, but relationships where love, care, accountability, curiosity, and reciprocity are free to move in both directions. Every time I honor that standard, I'm reinforcing the reality I want to continue living inside. Another place I can clearly see my proof system changing is in the way I relate to timing. I never wanted to receive something before I was able to energetically, emotionally, spiritually, and physically hold it. For me, the goal was never simply to arrive. It was to become someone who could sustain what I had been asking for once it arrived. When I really sat with myself, I realized it wasn't the external thing I was chasing in the first place. It wasn't simply the relationship, the opportunity, the money, the freedom. It was the feeling I believed those experiences would give me. That realization changed everything. Instead of asking, when will I receive it? I began asking, who do I need to become to naturally embody that feeling now? Because I've come to believe that my external life follows my internal one. The way I feel, the way I see myself, the way I visualize my life, the way I learn to hold those experiences within my own body. Those are the frequencies that eventually organize themselves into the reality I experience. I started becoming deeply interested in what I now think of as the backwork, learning the back codes, the unseen lessons that quietly prepare us to receive what we're asking for, the emotional capacity, the energetic capacity, the spiritual capacity, the physical capacity, learning how to embody a feeling before expecting life to mirror it back to me. That changed the way I looked at everyone else's journey too. There have been countless moments where people close to me received the very things I was still in the process of creating. But I never truly believed I was behind because I knew we were walking different paths, learning different lessons, and arriving in different seasons. Their journey was never meant to look like mine. Instead of seeing someone else's blessing as evidence that I was losing, I began seeing it as proof of what was possible. Every time someone I loved experienced a breakthrough, it reminded me that life is abundant enough for all of us. Their season didn't take anything away from mine. If anything, it became another reminder that my own season was unfolding in perfect timing. I also had to redefine what winning meant. Winning was never about arriving first. Winning became trusting myself enough to move at the pace my own soul required. I've had moments where envy or jealousy passed through my mind because I'm human, but they've never been my foundational soul codes. Those thoughts were never where I built my home. They simply became invitations to look deeper and ask myself what kind of proof system I truly wanted to create. I realized I wanted a proof system where I could wholeheartedly celebrate someone else's blessings without questioning whether there would still be enough left for me. A proof system where another person's light never required me to dim my own. A proof system where someone else's breakthrough expanded my belief instead of threatening it. Because if I believe we're all creating our own realities, then someone else's manifestation doesn't subtract from mine. It reminds me that creation is always happening. Looking back, I realized I wasn't waiting for my life to begin. I was learning how to become someone who could fully hold the life I was asking for. And to me, that's another form of proof. Every layer reveals something. Ironically, coloring my hair has become one of my greatest teachers in this. Every time I decide to recreate my image, it is never a one step process, especially when I'm moving away from vivid, vibrant colors. I don't immediately reach for bleach because I care about the long term health of my hair. Instead, I work with the color wheel. I remove one layer and then I stop and observe. When you strip away color, you never truly know what shade is waiting underneath until it reveals itself. Sometimes it's lighter than what you expected. Sometimes it's darker. Sometimes there are tones that you completely forgot were even there. Every layer gives me new information that I didn't have before. That new information becomes another opportunity to create proof. I could look at the unexpected colors and decide the process has failed, or I could recognize that the process is simply revealing what has been there all along. Once I know what I'm actually working with, I can make my next decision from reality instead of assumption. At any point, I could decide to stop because maybe I've uncovered a color I wasn't expecting to love. But if I still have another vision in my heart, then I simply continue creating from the new information I've been given. I don't continue pretending I'm still working with the color I started with. I work with a color that has actually revealed itself. Every time I change my hair, people probably think I'm just changing my appearance. But for me, it has never just been hair. It has always marked the beginning of another conversation with myself. Every new color, every new style, every new version of my image feels like I'm giving another part of myself permission to step forward. It's almost like a new version of me gently taps me on the shoulder and says, "Okay, I'm ready to take the wheel now." She already knows how she wants to move through the world. She knows how she wants to wear her crown. She knows how she wants to adorn her body. She knows the energy she wants to embody before I ever see it reflected back in the mirror. My job is simply to listen. I think that's why my transformations always seem so drastic to other people. By the time they meet the new version of me, I've already been living with her internally for quite some time. What they see as an overnight change has usually been quietly integrating inside of me for weeks, months, sometimes even years. My external world is simply catching up to a conversation that has already taken place within my soul. I also don't see these different versions of myself as separate people. They're all me. There are different facets of me, different expressions, different frequencies, different chapters that all belong to the same soul. Each one has her own personality, her own damn style, her own way of wearing my crown, her own way of expressing herself through my clothes, my hair, my voice, and even the way I move through the world. I've never been more proud to honor every single one of them instead of trying to stay loyal to only one version of myself. That's probably why I never panic when my hair doesn't immediately become what I envision. People often ask how I have the patience for the process. The truth is, I already know where I'm going. I trust myself and I am in no rush. My colors always arrive when they're supposed to. Sometimes they surprise me. Sometimes they ask for another layer. Sometimes they reveal something I wasn't expecting at all. But I've stopped measuring the journey by how quickly I get there. I enjoy watching the transformation reveal itself. Every layer teaches me something. Every adjustment introduces me to another possibility. Every decision is another opportunity to participate in creating the proof I would like to experience. And then there comes a moment that I can't really explain. I look in the mirror and I don't just see a new hair color. I recognize her. I smile and think, yeah, this is her. It doesn't feel like I've become someone different. It feels like another part of me has finally been given permission to be seen. That moment isn't just about my appearance, it's about recognition. It's about arriving at another version of home within. Somewhere along the way, I realized this is exactly how I've been recreating myself. Healing has never been about forcing myself into a version of who I think I'm supposed to become. It's about allowing each layer of myself to reveal something I couldn't have seen before. Every experience uncovers another color, another truth, another part of me that was always there beneath the surface. Sometimes I keep what I uncover because I love it. Other times I continue because I know there's still another layer of me calling me forward. Either way, I never leave the process the same person who began it. Maybe that's another form of proof. Not that everything immediately becomes what I envision, but that I've become someone who trusts the unfolding enough to stay with the process. I no longer need every step to look complete before I believe I'm moving in the right direction. I understand now that the in between isn't a mistake, it's information, it's the process revealing itself. And if I continue responding to what is actually being uncovered instead of resisting what I hope to see, I eventually arrive somewhere that isn't just beautiful, it feels authentically mine and hell, me. That's exactly how I've been healing. That's exactly how I've been recreating my life. As long as another layer is willing to reveal itself, I know the process is still working. Maybe that's why I've never been afraid to keep creating. I don't need perfection. I just need the willingness to participate in whatever the next layer is inviting me to become. The proof has been my willingness to recreate my life over and over again, to release identities that no longer fit and trust that something more authentic will emerge in their place. The proof has been packing up my life and moving to another country simply because my soul was curious enough to experience it. It has been trusting myself to come back home and begin again without seeing that as failure. It has been giving my inner child permission to wander, to play, to explore, to create, and to experience life with wonder instead of constantly asking what was practical or expected. The proof has been every time I've chosen authenticity over approval, every time I've surrendered control instead of gripping tighter, every difficult conversation, every loving boundary, every season of solitude, every version of myself I've been willing to outgrow, even when I had no idea who I would become next. The proof has been learning to build a life that feels magical from the inside instead of one that simply looks impressive from the outside. It's been discovering that peace can become familiar, that freedom can become a way of living, that my nervous system can learn to exhale, that I can trust myself to meet whatever life places in front of me because I've already done it so many times before. And as I'm writing this entry, peace and language together for something I felt for quite some time, but never quite knew how to explain. Lightning stretches across the sky, and thunder answers at the exact same moment. It's so loud that even the birds scatter from the trees. I just smile. Moments like these have become part of an ongoing conversation between me, my spirit team, and nature itself. Not because they prove anything to anyone else, but because they remind me how much my awareness has evolved. Years ago, I might have experienced a moment like this and simply moved on with my day. Now I notice how often the outer world seems to mirror the conversations unfolding within me. I don't see these moments as random interruptions. I experience them as another layer of a language I've been slowly learning to recognize. The more present I become, the more connected everything appears. It's as if life has been speaking this language all along. And only now am I becoming fluent enough to understand more of the conversation. My legacy thread. If this entry leaves you with anything, I hope it leaves you with a bigger question than where is the proof? I hope it invites you to ask yourself, what kind of life am I participating in creating? Because every day, whether we realize it or not, we're building a proof system. We build it through the stories we believe, through the meaning we give our experiences, through the boundaries we keep, through the love we offer ourselves, through the conversations we have with our own hearts, through the choices we make when no one else is watching. The proof system you inherited doesn't have to be the one you keep. You are allowed to rewrite it. You are allowed to decide what counts as evidence inside your own universe. Maybe your proof system will look different from mine, and I hope it does. But through my own experience, I've learned that my proof system works best when it operates from love instead of fear, wonder instead of certainty, curiosity instead of control, and trust instead of urgency. It reminds me that miracles and magic aren't separate from everyday life. They're often revealed through the meaning I choose to give each moment and my willingness to participate in creating the life I want to experience. Think bigger than collecting evidence. Think bigger than the finish line. Think about the life you're quietly participating in, creating every single day. Because one day you'll look back and realize the proof was never waiting for you at the end. It was being created with every step you chose to take. A whisper for you. Maybe you've been searching for proof in places where it was never meant to begin. Maybe you've been waiting for life to hand you evidence that you're on the right path, when all along, your own becoming has been quietly speaking for itself. If no one has told you lately, let me be the one to remind you. The way you keep getting up matters. The way you keep choosing yourself matters. The way your heart has softened after everything you've survived matters. The boundaries you've learned to honor matter. The peace you fought to protect matters. The quiet ways you've grown when no one was watching matter. Please don't overlook those moments simply because they can't be measured. Some of the most life changing transformations will never fit inside a photograph, a paycheck, a title, or an announcement. They'll live in the way you breathe now, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you trust what you feel before the world confirms it, in the way you no longer abandon yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. If you're still asking, does the way I measure my life still feel true to who I'm becoming? Maybe pause for just a moment. Place your hand over your heart. Feel your breath. Look at the person you've become, not the one you're still becoming, the one who is already here. Because I have a feeling they're carrying far more proof than they ever given themselves credit for. And if today is all you can hold, let today be enough. Honor this layer. Trust this unfolding. The next one will reveal itself when it's ready. Until then, keep becoming. I'll be cheering you on every step of the way. Here are your journal prompts for this week's entry. Number one, where did I learn what proof was supposed to look like? And does that definition still feel true to the person I'm becoming? Number two, What internal changes have taken place within me that no one else may recognize, but I know have completely transformed the way I experience my life? Number three, if I stop waiting for external evidence, what proof is already quietly unfolding within me today? Number four, what areas of my life are asking me to participate more fully instead of waiting for certainty before I begin? Number five, if I consciously chose to rewrite my proof system, what would I want it to measure instead? Thank you for witnessing this soul stream. Return to it whenever you need to come home to yourself. Until next time, stay soft, stay true, and keep streaming your soul your way. Love, Sim.